Welcome to the Megyn Kelly Show. Today, we're tackling the heated debate over biological males competing in women's sports, a story reignited by recent events during Pride Month and amplified by media coverage, particularly cases like the Algerian boxer Riyane Khalif. Link Lauren, great to have you here to break it all down.
Thanks, Megan. This controversy seems to escalate every year. The core issue is whether allowing biological males into women's competitions undermines fairness, safety, and opportunities for female athletes. It's not just an Olympic-level problem. We're seeing it from high school to college sports, and the response has been dramatically polarized.
Exactly. I remember when we first reported on Khalif's genetics long before the mainstream picked it up, we confirmed he had XY chromosomes. Yet, we were labeled transphobes and bigots by outlets like Media Matters and The Daily Show. What do you make of the media's role in shaping public opinion here?
The media often frames the narrative through an ideological lens. Instead of engaging the scientific facts like chromosome tests, they focus on emotional appeals or accusations of bigotry. This can drown out legitimate concerns about competitive equity and athlete safety, especially when dissenting voices are ridiculed or silenced.
Let's get specific. When it comes to biological sex, chromosomal testing is the gold standard, right? In Khalif's case, test results confirmed an XY karyotype, meaning he is genetically male. Why is this distinction so crucial in competitive sports?
Biological sex determines physical characteristics such as muscle mass, bone density, and lung capacity. For instance, males on average have 10–12% greater muscle mass and higher hemoglobin levels, which translates to performance advantages in speed, strength, and endurance. That's why sex-segregated sports exist in the first place.
And yet, as you know, some argue that hormone therapy or self-identification should be sufficient for eligibility. Are there studies showing whether these interventions actually level the playing field?
Great question. Research, including a 2020 British Journal of Sports Medicine study, shows that even after a year of cross-sex hormones, trans women retain significant strength and size advantages over natal females. The differences aren't fully erased, making direct competition problematic for fairness and safety.
Let's bring this closer to home. Recently in California, a trans-identified male athlete, A.B. Hernandez, won first place in the girls' triple jump and tied in the high jump at state championships. The actual female competitors were forced to share the podium. What message does this send to young women training for these events?
It's deeply demoralizing. For many girls, state championships aren't just about medals, they're gateways to college scholarships and athletic careers. Losing out to athletes with a male advantage strips them of those opportunities. Imagine training since childhood only to face a competitor with an insurmountable biological edge.
And it's not isolated, these cases are multiplying. Some states have tried dual podium solutions, but is that really a solution or just a band-aid?
It's a cosmetic fix that doesn't address the underlying inequity. Sharing first place doesn't restore the rightful winner's sense of achievement or the potential scholarship opportunities tied to being the sole gold medalist.
Let's talk about language. Mainstream outlets insist on using female pronouns for biological males in these stories. For example, NBC referred to A.B. Hernandez as her daughter. How does this affect public understanding and the debate at large?
Language shapes perception. When media universally adopts gender-affirming language, it can obscure the biological realities at play. This creates confusion, especially for people not following the issue closely, and frames dissent as inherently hateful rather than a legitimate stance rooted in scientific fact and fairness.
There's also the emotional pressure parents are told that not affirming their child will lead to catastrophic outcomes. Does this tactic help or hinder rational debate?
It often shuts down conversation. Instead of evaluating policy implications, people become afraid to speak up for fear of being labeled bigots or blamed for potential tragedies, even though the evidence for these claims is far from settled.
We're seeing a growing number of female athletes protest these policies, like the Oregon high school girls who stepped off the podium rather than share it with a trans athlete. What does this say about the cultural shift underway?
It signals that the silent majority is reaching a tipping point. According to recent polls, over 70% of Americans believe only biological females should compete in women's sports. These public acts of defiance are pushing institutions to reconsider, even as activists and some media push back.
Are we likely to see more organized resistance from athletes themselves, possibly even legal challenges?
Absolutely. There are already lawsuits pending, citing Title IX violations. As more athletes and their families realize the stakes, expect both grassroots activism and legal battles to intensify.
Let's contextualize. This isn't the first time we've seen male-female performance gaps in sports. Remember when the Williams sisters, top women's tennis players, lost handily to the 203rd ranked male? And the U.S. women's soccer team lost to under 15 boys. What do these examples illustrate?
They show the consistent, quantifiable male advantage in physical sports. On average, even elite female athletes can't outperform average male counterparts. These gaps are documented across disciplines: track, swimming, soccer, boxing, highlighting why sex-based divisions were established in the first place.
So when governing bodies ignore this data, what's the risk to the integrity of women's sports?
It erodes public trust and discourages female participation. If outcomes are predetermined by biology, the incentive to train and compete diminishes, undermining decades of progress achieved through Title IX and similar efforts.
Politically, this issue is becoming a flashpoint. For example, President Trump's executive order aimed to bar males from female sports, while states like California have adopted more inclusive policies. How are lawmakers navigating the tension between inclusion and fairness?
It's a balancing act, but the pendulum is swinging. Several states have passed laws restricting participation based on biological sex, citing fairness and safety. Meanwhile, federal guidance under Title IX is being debated in courts. The outcome may shape national standards for years to come.
How have these policies affected public opinion and party alignment?
They've contributed to a political realignment. Polls show increasing Republican support and eroding Democratic margins among certain demographics, especially parents and female athletes. The debate is galvanizing voters around issues of fairness and parental rights.
Switching gears a bit, the backlash against trans policies in sports has spilled over into broader LGBTQ issues, including declining support for gay marriage among Republicans and debates about gay adoption. What's driving this wider shift?
There's a sense among some conservatives that the initial push for equal rights has morphed into demands for special privileges, particularly regarding children and gender ideology. This has triggered what social scientists call issue fatigue, where support wanes if new demands feel excessive or misaligned with shared values.
Do you think some of the current activism is undermining previous gains, like marriage equality?
Potentially, yes. When advocacy is perceived as overreaching, such as pushing gender identity in schools or sports, it can create backlash that affects the broader LGBTQ community, even those who don't endorse the most radical positions.
Let's examine how media coverage impacts discourse. When stories like Khalif's are reported with selective facts or ideological spin, what's the consequence for public understanding?
It polarizes the debate and distorts reality. Studies show that highly partisan reporting increases distrust and makes compromise harder. People become entrenched, seeing opponents as not just wrong, but malicious. This atmosphere makes nuanced discussion and policymaking almost impossible.
Is there a solution? How can we foster more honest, fact-based dialogue?
It starts with transparency, using accurate terminology, presenting data openly, and allowing dissenting voices space to speak without fear of censorship or reprisal. Platforms that prioritize civil debate over outrage can help restore trust in public conversation.
As we wrap up, where do you see this debate heading? Are we at a tipping point for policy changes in sports and beyond?
The momentum seems to be building for policies that restore competitive fairness, especially as more high-profile cases surface and female athletes speak out. The next few years could see clearer guidelines, likely based on biological sex, at both state and federal levels. Broader society will continue grappling with how to balance inclusion with fairness.
Any advice for listeners who want to get involved or stay informed on this issue?
Stay engaged. Seek out primary sources, and support organizations advocating for fairness in women's sports. Don't be afraid to ask questions and demand evidence from those shaping policy. Ultimately, a healthy democracy depends on informed, active citizens challenging both dogma and disinformation.